We're talking serial killers, cold cases, just unimaginable tragedy. But the real heart of this story, it's the human connection between two people whose lives would never, ever have crossed paths under normal circumstances. And when I say they were from different worlds, I mean completely different worlds. So let's meet our two main characters. You really can't get more different than these two. On one side, you've got Jane Howatt. She's 37, a mother living in the suburbs, married to a doctor, and she has this dream of becoming a writer. Her life is all carpools and tennis clubs. And on the other side, you've got John St. John, a 64-year-old LAPD legend they call Jigsaw. This is a guy who spent his entire life staring into the abyss of human evil. But he wasn't some Hollywood tough guy. He was actually really unassuming, more like Columbo than Dirty Harry. So how on earth do these two people even meet? Well, it all kicked off with a simple morning newspaper and, honestly, a whole lot of grit. So picture this. Jane sees an article about Jigsaw solving the freeway killer case and decides right then and there she's ditching her idea for a tennis book. She starts cold calling the LAPD homicide squad. And you can guess how that went, right? They pretty much told her, thanks, but no thanks. But Jane just didn't give up. She kept calling until Jigsaw himself, probably just to get her to stop, agreed to meet her at a steakhouse. And this is so classic Jigsaw. He gets there early and sits right next to her at the bar, just listening to her talk without telling her who he is, trying to get a measure of this woman who was so determined to tell his story. That steakhouse meeting was just the beginning of this unbelievable journey. Jane didn't just get an interview, she basically signed up for a 13-year masterclass in murder investigation. Just think about that for a second. 13 years. This wasn't some quick assignment. We're talking about over a decade of her life committed to shadowing this detective, stepping out of her comfortable, safe suburban world and into his, a world of dingy motels, shocking autopsies, and maximum security prisons. And the sheer scale of what she was stepping into, it's just massive. Jigsaw wasn't just any old detective. Throughout his career, he solved more than 1,000 murders. That's the kind of weight, the sheer volume of cases and victims and grief that Jane was suddenly tasked with chronicling. And we're not talking about simple open and shut cases here. She was right there in the thick of investigations into some of LA's most infamous serial killers, guys like William Bonin, the freeway killer, and William Bradford, a photographer who lured women to their deaths. Jigsaw even worked the original Black Dahlia case. Imagine going from PTA meetings to that. It had to be just a total shock to the system. And Jigsaw's view on all this? It was chillingly practical. He said, these guys all kill the same way you or me pick a banana off a tree. To him, there was no deep, complex mystery to it. They have an urge, they act on it, and they will not stop until somebody physically stops them. That was the harsh reality Jane had to get her head around to survive in his world. But, all this time spent in the trenches, it did more than just lead to a book. It completely transformed Jane and created this unbreakable bond between this very odd couple. Jigsaw actually had this affectionate nickname for her when they started, Miss Panic. And she admits it herself, she was afraid of everything. She'd never even seen a dead body, and suddenly she's standing over them at gruesome crime scenes. That name just perfectly captures where she started. So how did she go from Miss Panic to a true partner? Well, it was a total trial by fire. First, she had to face her fears head-on, standing in morgues during autopsies. Then, bit by bit, through sheer persistence, she earned Jigsaw's trust, getting access that no writer had ever gotten before. And finally, she moved beyond just writing down facts. She became a witness to the profound grief of the victims' families, realizing her real job was to honor their stories. And in going through all of that together, something really remarkable happened. They became true friends. The hardened detective and the suburban writer, they found this common ground in the pursuit of justice. And it's a bond that defied all the odds and changed them both forever. And that shared purpose is what led Jane to chronicle the life of one of the greatest detectives in LAPD history, to preserve the legacy of the man who held its most coveted badge. So what made Jigsaw such a legend? Well, it's not what you'd think. He looked like an everyman, rumpled suits and a fedora, but he carried badge number 1, which is a symbol of the absolute best of the best in the LAPD. His legacy? Solving over 1,000 homicides and putting a dozen serial killers behind bars. But here's the really incredible part. In a 43-year career chasing the worst people imaginable, he never once shot a culprit. He relied on curiosity, persistence, and empathy instead. But a legend story is only as good as its storyteller, right? And a fellow retired LAPD detective really nailed it. He called Jane Jigsaw's Bosworth, the essential person who could tell the legend's story and capture the real man behind the badge. So in the end, their partnership created a book that is just so much more than a typical true crime novel. It's a tribute to Jigsaw's life, for sure, but it's also this incredible testament to Jane's own courage, her willingness to follow a path that, let's be honest, her friends and even her writing teacher thought was a total joke. That's a powerful story all on its own. So what's the big takeaway from all this? I mean, Jane Howatt started out as a suburban housewife with a dream to write. But by answering this completely unexpected call, she didn't just write a story. She ended up living one. Her journey just shows what's possible when you have the courage to step into a world you were never meant to see. And it leaves us with a really big question to think about. What happens when an ordinary person decides to follow an extraordinary calling?